our lives right now, man. We used to be the Niners, Tom. We got to salvage it, man. We got to salvage it. But before we do that, we got to talk about it, baby. We are here. We are here. Welcome to the Coach's Huddle. It's your boy, the Coach, back at it again with another installment of the Faithful Review. And I'm here with my guy, Tom Jensen. Tom,
been a rough week, Coach.
We got to stop meeting each other like this. This is getting a little crazy, man. I feel like it's Groundhog's Day.
Yeah.
Hey, we got the Bears, Tom. First of all, Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay, Coach. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Just getting through the week. It's Friday. Excited to get the game going. You know, even though we're 5-7, Tom, I'm still excited for football. I'm still excited for just the story, right? Like, if you look at it and we back up and go like 10,000-foot view, this is just another saga, another story, right? It's just this is our script, right? We're cream of the crop. We're the guys that are hunting, trying to get first place dominance, trying to get ready for the playoffs. And, we have a different fate this season. And you're not really a fan. You're not really a part of it if you take your ball and go home, right?
Yeah. You have to put up with the drama. And that's what this year has been. It's drama from the get-go. Drama before the year even began.
My God. So look, man, let's get into this beautiful bean footage. All right. So look, the 49ers versus the Bears Sunday matchup. Let's get to it. The 49ers at 5-7 face the 4-8 Chicago Bears this Sunday. How do injuries and team inconsistency shape this critical game? And what must the 49ers do to stay in the playoff hunt? I can't even believe I finished it like that. But look, let's just go ahead and look at it. The Bears are coming in at 4-8. They're off of 10 days rest. The Bears are coming in, like I said, off of 4-8, off of 10 days rest. Last game they played was in Thanksgiving. They fired their head coach, Matt Eberflus, bringing on Thomas Brown, an interim head coach who, I don't know if they're taking him seriously or not, but that's their storyline. They've lost 6 games in a row. And in those 6 games, of those 6 games, not the 6 games in a row, but 6 games that they have lost this year, they've lost by 1 score or less. So this is a young team that's not necessarily great as far as coaching is concerned. In my opinion, I think they were a little poorly coached. But you just look at some of the things that they have, some of the teams that they have beaten. They've beaten the Titans, the Rams, the Panthers, and the Jags. That we all know about that infamous loss to the Washington Commanders, the Hail Mary, that pretty much killed things. But let's try to get to why they have the 8 losses. I mean, they're the most sacked team in the NFL with 42 sacks coming this year. But they are getting healthy. That's the thing about them. The only 3 players that they only had 3 players on their entire roster not practice today. And 3 of some of the main players that did come back to practice this year, came back to practice today was Swift. You have Mercedes Lewis. And right about now, there's one guy that I'm afraid of, man. Roschon Johnson. Their running back. I'm going to tell you, if there was a guy that is really going to run through your face and really make things bad, it's Roschon Johnson. Right now, he's in concussion protocol, and we want him to play, but not really.
I know where you're coming from. You don't root for injury, but at the same time, it would help the team if he doesn't play.
100%.
But yeah, Roschon Johnson's a road grader. He goes through people.
Definitely. You look at their defense, that's pretty much the strength of their team. They've got the eighth ranked defense in the league, comprised pretty much of this ridiculously talented secondary that they have. They got some really hellified corners. They bring their biggest guy right now, as far as like their pass rusher, is Montez Sweat. Not Montez Sweat. Is it Montez Sweat?
Yeah.
Montez. Yes, sorry. Montez Sweat. The recent they got him from the Commanders, I believe.
Yes.
Traded him in from the Commanders. But I will say, on defense, the biggest matchup right now will be Kevin Byard versus George Kittle. We got to get George Kittle involved. Kevin Byard is also older, a little bit longer in the tooth, but what George Kittle brings, I'm expecting that to be a really big matchup. Offensively, one thing, well, also, just to not really get off defense yet, one of the things that I can see, not to just to leave some meat on the bone for you, is that we already know that the worst of what they do is their interior. The linebackers are really not anything to write home about. Their defensive tackles are a little bit weak. They can get ran on. I believe that the interior run game is something that we could really do on them. But if you break into their offense, man, the best of what they do right now is understanding that they love to get the ball down the field in spurts. They don't have anybody on their offense that averages over 70 yards receiving a game. They kind of spread the ball all the way around, right? With DJ Moore and Adunze. They also have their tight end that they get the ball out to. They have their Kimmett. And I'll tell you right now, this is a team where they're young. They've played a lot of football down to the wire. This is a team that has played a shit ton of football down to the wire. And also, don't look now, but we're about to face the number one red zone defense in the NFL. This is what the Bears bring. So one thing I will say is that they do give up yards on the ground. They average over 6 yards per carry given up. So we can run on them, right? But I think that what they do with their corners, man, it's going to be tough sledding passing the ball. It's got to be a George Kittle day. It's got to be up against those linebackers, inside of those hashes. We really got to figure out creative ways how to get George the ball. But that's just my take on the matchup.
Yeah.
What do you got coming in?
That's a great overview. I think the key is that they don't stop the run well. That
Mm-hmm.
4.9 yards per carry, that's third worst in the league. So I think that's something you can take them on. They gave up 194 yards to Detroit last week. So you can run on this team. And the question that I would have for Shanahan is, okay, who's your second running back in this game? If your answer is Debo, you lose. If your answer is an actual running back, you can win this. But he's going to need to give Guerrero the ball steadily, and he's going to need to use the other running backs, not Debo. Problem is that you go back in this season, when he's faced this kind of a situation, he's defaulted to Debo as his second running back. Can't do that in this one. Um, the concern I have is the red zone problems. That Chicago's defense is good in the red zone, and the Niners' red zone is the red carpet. They've given up 9 touchdowns in the last 9 red zone possessions they faced. You go in and you waltz. The Niners can't afford to do that in this game. And so you've got DeAndre Swift. He's coming off of injury. He hasn't been 100% for a while now. His offensive line isn't that great. So they can be stopped, but you've also got to deal with Caleb. And Caleb has 7.5 yards per carry in his last 4 games. He can beat the Niners, and the Niners are the worst in the league at stopping quarterbacks running out of dropbacks. So that's my worry is what's Caleb going to do on third down? Is he going to pick up first downs for them, or are the Niners going to be able to get to him, given that I don't think Bosa's going to play? How are you going to get pressure on the Bears to prevent those explosives down the field? How are you going to make that stop? And how are you going to stop Caleb at the same time? You have to stop the run and the pass on the same play against the same player. Can the Niners do that? If they can, they win. If they can't, they lose. But this
Yeah.
is Caleb's game to win. And I think that Shanahan has to win this game strategically by continuing to just go at the Bears in the run. Don't force the pass. Just keep sledgehammering them inside. That's how you win.
Pause. I definitely understand where you're coming from. One thing that I will say is that With the Bears, this is a young bunch. Like you said, they're really big on explosives. Number one team in the league in plaster drill, basically getting outside extended plays. Caleb loves to get outside of the pocket. I'll tell you right now is that um, I'm being fair, but in a sense, what he brings is I'm just going to run around and try to make something happen, kind of throw some things up against the wall. And the kid is talented in a vacuum. It's exactly the type of quarterback that you don't want to face when you face teams like us, where we haven't necessarily shown consistency across the board, primarily with tackling. That's a really big thing that we have to worry about with this team, because one thing that the Bears do have is that I just saw a comment saying that Roshan Johnson was out. I hope he is. But I will tell you is that if these boys get going downhill, it's anybody's ball game. And this is a team that will play just by sheer effort and who they are right now, basically their team. They're going to play 60 minutes. This is their reality. They don't play with leads. They don't blow people out. They're not used to having the second team unit come on the field with 13 minutes left to go in the game. This is a team that knows that literally every game we play is a dogfight. And if we come in there half stepping against these dudes, they will beat us.
Yeah. Well, the Bears are accustomed to winning games, or at least competing physically. They're going to come after you because they're a young physical team. That's how they're going to win, is their athleticism, their power, their ability to just take the game to you. And so I think that's what Chicago's going to try to do here. And I give them a pretty good shot of doing that in this game, because not only are they playing good ball in terms of they're losing, but they're very close to very good teams. But also firing Eberflus, I think, is something that can galvanize the team. That you can look back on this and say Eberflus cost us games. And if you're a player, you're looking back on that and saying, I want to prove that Eberflus cost us games, that we're a better team than this. And I think Chicago's going to come into this game with something to prove. And it's up to the Niners to do the same thing, because they're facing a pride check game. You got blown out in Green Bay and Buffalo. What do you got? You don't want people shoveling dirt on you. It's time to show up and play.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pride on both sides. The
Yeah.
Bears' pride in saying that we're better than Eberflus, and the Niners' pride in saying we're better than 5-7.
Yeah, there's a lot of narrative there. This isn't one of those games where it's just a foregone conclusion. I mean, and don't look now, by the numbers, we're not dead. I know that this has been a horrible season, that our ego is beat up, but in stages like this, during the season, you got to search for equity anywhere you can find it. And right now, mathematically, we're not dead. So we got to be able to keep that going as well. So it's going to be a hell of a game. Let's get into our next topic. Oh, well, before we do that, let's get into just a couple of super chats. Matt McCune, $5. Thank you. Tom, I swear to God, if Kyle drafts a tight end in the first round, I'm blaming you.
I'm sorry, Matt. It's just, we'll talk about this later, but yeah.
Definitely. It is a topic.
Do I think that's what Kyle's going to do? Yes.
Tom.
Do I think everybody in faithful land is going to come at Kansas, to come into Levi's with pitchforks? Yeah.
Matt McCune, $5. Thank you, Matt. 49ers, one of the worst in red zone efficiency against the number one defense in the red zone. It's going to be crazy, man. They're ranked number one, man. So it's going to be a wild ride. Let's get into our next topic. So blow it up or stick with the vets. With one of the NFL's oldest rosters, should the 49ers embrace a rebuild and secure a younger foundation, or keep pushing for success with their veteran core? Right now, we already know, Tom. We understand what it is. We got the Cabo clique. Okay? If we're looking at how our team is built, right about now, maybe the top 10 players on our team right now are Trent Williams, Charvarius Ward, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Diamador Lenore, Jake Brendel, Kyle Juszczyk, and Kyle Juszczyk. Is it time to double down and add pieces to this core? Or is it time for us to start making wholesale changes, right? Making some serious decisions at the end of the season where, right about now, I don't think letting go of Debo right now is viable due to the money that he's due. Next year, Debo's dead cap hit is at $43.3 million a year.
Ouch.
Yeah, at a cap hit of 12. All right. So I don't think there's anybody really asking they're not going to cut Debo, in my opinion. They might ask him, and they also just restructured him too. So I don't know. They
Which
might
they
rip the
shouldn't have done.
they shouldn't have, but they might rip the Band-Aid off. You never know. You look at Kyle Juszczyk. Kyle Juszczyk is making $3 million in 2025. He's due for an annual base salary of $4.1 million. There's no way in God's green earth he should get 1 red cent of that money. And his dead cap hit is only $2.2 million. Bye-bye, Juice. So basically what I'm saying is what should the Niners do? Should they hold tight onto these guys, or should they start making wholesale changes and moving forward, rip the Band-Aid off, start accruing the dead cap money, don't spread it out, because we already have the Eric Armstead dead cap that's going to hit next year, right? So right about now, should we just eat it, for lack of a better term, like just plan it? Hey, next year, don't even worry about wins, because if we pace this out, we could be in dead cap purgatory for maybe like 3 to 4 more years, still trying to get these guys off the books, right?
Right.
And on top of it, what type of destiny? This is beyond Kyle now. This is an organization conversation.
Correct.
What are we going to be doing as far as courting any type of viable candidate to come into this type of mess on the books? Like, fiscally, we're not an attractive team right now, if you look at it. And all of this has Kyle's fingerprints all over it, but we're left holding the bag because we got the emblem. So where do you stand with what we should do moving forward?
What we should do is look upon next year as just bloodletting. Of just you're already going to pay Armstead all that money, and so let's just take that 1 year and say we are going to bleed dry. We're going to take all these bad contracts and get out of them. That's what I would do. Do I think they will? No, because it's Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle's not going to do that. Kyle has got us into this mess. He's going to stay in this mess because that's who he is. And you've also got the problem, as you pointed out, of can you even get out of Debo? You can't trade him. And if you cut him, the dead cap hit is ginormous. What are you going to do? Juice, you have to tell him to retire. Will he? Probably not. He'll say, I was just a Pro Bowler this year. And he's leading the Pro Bowl voting for fullback. Fullback shouldn't even be on the ballot for the Pro Bowl. But here we are. He can use that as an argument and say that, well, I'm still viable. But as you've shown in your film analysis, he's whiffing on some of his blocks. He needs to go. Whether they can do that or not, we'll see. Whether Kyle's willing to let go of, is Kyle willing to jettison the Cabo click? That's the question. Debo's his buddy. Juszczyk's his buddy. Is he willing to let them go? We'll find out. Part of the reason why you need a new GM is you need separation between the GM and the players. Kyle's too close to these guys, and it factors into the decision. The decision from a football perspective is you got to get out of these guys. These contracts are just going to destroy the team. And I would rather take a year and say we're going to have to face the full pain of it, rip the Band-Aid completely off, get the tourniquet out. We're just, here we go with all the blood. But do I think that Shanahan's willing to do that? Absolutely not, given that he could be on the hot seat going into the year, and then you tell Kyle, okay, now we're going to take on all this blood. He's not going to be willing to do that. And if he's still the GM, he's not going to choose to do that either.
Agreed, man. My biggest thing right now, and then also, this is kind of I don't even want to bring this up, and it feels like I'm kind of like punching down, but I'm really not. And I'm prefacing this because, we're here to tell the truth the way we see it. You know what I mean? And we're trying to put our best foot forward. But there's a world where they're going to have a conversation with Brandon Aiyuk. You know, like that's a big deal. And I'm not, you know, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible. Like I understand that Brandon needs to come back healthy. If Brandon Aiyuk comes back not a hair less of an athlete than what he was before he came here, I will be thrilled. Right. So that's not what this is about. But if we're talking about, you know, moving forward with, you know, rebuilding the team and actually going to get assets and developing guys, you know, BA is going to come back and immediately the clock is going to be ticking. You know, I think they give him a season, but after that, you know, I think that there's possibly some early outs that they have to deal with, that they can probably get on, or they would ask him to take a pay cut maybe just because they want to keep him, right? But an early out would basically kick him to the curb. But
right. Well, but remember that he's already received a lot of upfront money, so it's less of an issue for him in terms of the financial aspect of it. That he's received a large upfront payment, he's due another large upfront payment early in the year next year. So provided he gets those two payments, I think Aiyuk will be willing to be more flexible in terms of what happens going forward. As Kawachipto says in the chat, there are early outs in that contract. So there are paths that the Niners can choose to take, and they might have to. And we'll see. But basically it comes down to, is Brandon going to be back to who he was? And if so, that makes him more viable in terms of using him as a trade asset. But I think that financially they're going to have to get their house in order. Part of that is going to be moving on from Aiyuk when they can.
yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate the way things play out, but I mean, it changes in the blink of an eye. And right now, the only thing about it is, okay, I get wanting to be in a window, and I understand wanting to preserve a regime, but at the same time, we can put ourselves in a really bad position trying to hold on to names and trying to stay.
Yeah.
Like trying to keep a feeling, you know, like this version of the 49ers was awesome, right? And it still is. However, they're on notice, especially, and a lot of it is because of the contracts. So right now, if we want to be, you know, teams that we look at that make these types of deals, you know, that are even in our own damn division, then we've got to actually make some hardcore decisions right now. I think, and I believe, like, it can't wait a year or two from now, where it can't wait 2 years from now. Like, this offseason is going to be big, right?
Yes.
You're going to think about this. We got to look at Christian McCaffrey coming back, being what he's supposed to be. Also, oh my God, you know another thing? You know another contract that they got to get rid of? Javon Hargraves.
Yeah.
They got to get rid of.
His base salary next year is $19.9 million. They've got to move on. His cap hits 28. You know, they have to move on from Hargraves.
They gotta move on. He cannot play for us next year. That's a huge contract. But you see what I'm saying? Like, all of this dead weight, a lot of this stuff made sense when we were like chasing a Super Bowl. I get all of that. But now we gotta come back and retool, and, you know, having that type of money into one guy who wasn't really living up to the contract to begin with.
Right.
We got to move on, right? So it is what it is, Tom.
He's an absolute, but, you know, part of this is just that you have to decide, how do you get back to being a Super Bowl contender? And I think that the answer to that is you're going to have to get your financial house in order first.
Mm-hmm.
Hard as that's going to be, as long as that's going to take, until that happens, they're not viable.
Yeah. So, hey, they got to move on. This is going to be a very interesting offseason. But for me, I say blow it up. Blow it up. It's time.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. Let's get into the next topic. Lessons learned. All right. What must change that we learned this year? What positions? Oh, hold on. There we go. What have the 49ers learned from this season that they can apply to next year? Which areas on and off the field require the most significant changes based on this season's results? Let's talk about it. It's been a rough year, right?
Yeah.
And
A lot of
one
things went wrong.
lot of things went wrong, but it's important to reassess. It's
Yeah.
important to go back
No doubt.
and understand where you went wrong, some things that you could maybe retool for next year, some processes that you can streamline, a couple of things. Maybe some guys are wearing way too many hats as far as job titles. We need to start compartmentalizing our process so we can have checks and balances. Our food is touching, things are running up against each other, and there's not enough scrutiny for somebody to get outvoted, for there to be another change in direction because the room decides to do things. And it's way too many decisions that are based off of single point of failure results, meaning that it's judge, jury, executioner with one guy, and there's nobody there to actually make sense of how things are played out. So, with the lessons learned moving into this season, one of the things that I can see immediately is the contracts. You know, dude, either sign them or move on. No more, like, the operative phrase that the Niners should have in all contract negotiations moving forward is that we don't negotiate with terrorists. Like, we just don't. All right. We don't negotiate with terrorists, okay? Like, you're not gonna get online and make these decrees, and you're not gonna sit here and leverage us. They should have paid these guys their market rate early up for good and God, and just put it out there and gave these dudes the opportunity to say yes or no. Another thing is, I feel as though that Kyle needs less power
Absolutely.
in negotiations, man. Like, 100%. Like, we need to move on from this. Christian McCaffrey gets doubled down on being not the number one paid running back in the league, but the one plus paid running back in the league. Like, he was already the first paid running back in the league. You know, I don't know how you get that injured and that injury didn't persist before the season. I don't think that Christian just all of a sudden picked all of this stuff up in camp. So that doesn't look good. Then you look at the deal with Trent, making sure all that money comes in. And then, right now, Trent's persona non grata right now, especially with what he's dealing with on a personal front. But for what it's worth, you just got to look at the facts. The facts is that he's not here, right? And you just got to leave it at that, so I'll stay there. So what are some of the things that you've seen with lessons learned moving forward? Also, workload and usage. Tom, let me cook for like 1 minute, okay?
Sure. Go.
I put out a tweet earlier this week about Kyle Shanahan. And the tweet basically said, hold on, I'm going to go to the tweet now because I feel like now would be a better time than any to actually address this on my own platform. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. So I put out a tweet that honestly, I did not mean to get as much traction as it did. I really didn't. But the tweet basically states this: Kyle Shanahan's handling of Christian McCaffrey was absolutely careless and borderline reckless. CMC is the kind of guy who plays all out all the time. He doesn't know how to hold back. And Shanahan completely took advantage of that. Instead of protecting him, he used him like an overloaded pack mule while ignoring Jordan Mason for 3 straight weeks. It's disgusting and shows Shanahan has zero self-awareness. How can a coach not realize he's running one of his best players in the ground? It's irresponsible and flat out inexcusable. So look, let's talk about it. Workload has many different facets, okay? Workload does not always have to deal with volume, all right? Workload has to deal with frequency of that volume, meaning that how often do I get the ball and when do I get the ball? Workload has everything to do with consistency, All right. Giving me cold reps versus hot reps during certain areas of the game. Workload has everything to do with self-awareness of the guy who you're giving the ball to, the guy who you're putting on the field, especially as a runner. Okay. So this is what I mean by workload. If I'm a running back, okay, and I'm coming in and I get the first 10 carries of the game, all right, that's good workload. That's giving me a chance to feel the defense. That's giving me a chance to see exactly what the game is going to entail for me. However, if I'm a running back where I get 1 to 2 carries during critical downs of the game, all right, and they're not even my best runs, all right, it's a crapshoot on what you're going to get from me. All right, because I'm not being paced out on a consistent basis, and you're not giving me any ownership to the run game. All right, you can't do that with running backs. You can't. You can't use them like pitchers. Just pull them in and start them, then throw them out. No, you got to give them feel. And if you're gonna do that, you got to go with the hot hand. That's where that comes from. Where if a guy gets rhythm, you don't mess with that rhythm. That's it. He's got a feel for the defense. He's the workhorse for the day, and we're moving on. That's it. My biggest issue with Kyle, with workload, is that whatever momentum that Jordan Mason had picked up throughout the first 6 games of the season, completely out the window with the 3 weeks of him not getting the ball. Out of the window. Feel gone, momentum gone, all right? Vision gone, angles gone. They don't do any of this stuff in practice. So the only time that he gets swings at the bat is during games. So for 3 weeks, let's look at the inverse. You give Christian over 20 carries from over 20 touches from scrimmage for 3 straight games. And we saw he was not back. We saw this. Not pacing him out, not giving him the best reps possible to help him out, all right? Put Christian in the slot. Throw him a toss, okay? So he can get to the outside, so he can play with the angles. No. We got to we got to bang him on the inside zone. Put him on everything to try to test his vision. For me, it wasn't the best way to pace him out. You shouldn't have played him like that immediately. It wasn't healthy. All right. That's how I see it. And the biggest thing for me is that we've got proof of concept. Elijah Mitchell. Hello.
Yeah. Where's the caution?
What are we talking about?
Doesn't exist.
So we're not going to act like Kyle don't call games like he's playing Madden with no injuries on and the stamina off. He does not care. So for me, I just feel as though that we need to learn from our mistakes. And that is, dude, if he's coming back, Christian is going to play as hard as he can. But you put him in a controlled environment, Now, to the injury, yes, there was in a vacuum. He did injure his knee in a one-off play. I get that. I understand that. But my deal is that there should have been other runs. There should have been more of that happening before we got to the tundra, and you're running them through the tackles. Like the ingratiation of Jordan Mason into the game during the Bills game is what we should have been seeing day one when Christian got here. We should have been seeing that day one, not watching him struggle. And then by the time he gets to Green Bay, he was a shell of himself. And you still only gave Jordan Mason 3 carries that game. Like, you're not even trying, right? Like, put your best foot forward. That was my biggest issue with how Christian basically ended up getting on IR this year, is that why are we acting like we didn't take us 2 months just to get this dude on the field? And then all of a sudden we're running them like it's business as usual. And then we got the leading scorer in the NFL sitting on the sideline eating sunflower seeds. It don't make sense.
No, it's not justifiable in any way.
Right.
Any. So
So, I mean, the only thing that's crazy about this is that, you look at Jordan Mason. There's people that can watch this and say, "Well, coach, Jordan Mason got hurt. What do you say to that? Because that's him coming in and he got hurt. So it doesn't matter about workload." I say that you don't understand what we just talked about.
Exactly.
Because slowing him down hurts him.
Puts him in a vulnerable place.
He's cold.
Yeah, think of it like a car. You don't just gun a car in the cold and expect it to run well.
Come on.
And that's what Kyle is doing. You're giving him one carry for 16 yards. You're gunning a car in the snow. And this is a bell cow that you're doing this to. So there's a number of things to unpack. That was so well said, Coach. Bravo.
Yeah. So that's my thing about workload. Workload isn't about sheer numbers, carries, right?
No.
It's not about that. It's about intelligently understanding how to protect your players while getting the most out of them and having them work off of each other while they collectively help the team. Right. That's workload. That's understanding. Hey, I got to get Christian going, right? That's understanding. I got to get Christian going, but I can't sacrifice Jordan's productivity. I can't lose Jordan. So we got to figure out a way how to get both of you on the field. We got to figure out a way how to get Christian on the field, that we can warm Christian up, get him going. Like there's so many other things that could have happened versus Christian gets the ball 20 times a game until he's done by week 4. Come on.
Well,
you mean to tell me that wasn't the number one vulnerability to stay away from? You know what I mean? Like,
of course, yeah. If you just approach this logically, you would know that intelligent process would say, you have to do this correctly. You have to balance this thing out. Kyle doesn't do it. Why? It goes back to the mindset we've talked about so many times before. Kyle is about winning the play. How does he win the play? By playing McCaffrey and hitting the easy button every single time. Kyle doesn't want to be bothered with switching running backs and rotating. He wants to just get buried in the Denny's menu and call his play, as opposed to having to concern himself with which running back.
Yeah, he can't be bothered. He can't be bothered with that.
He doesn't want that, so he wants to just run it. And now we've seen the pattern before of Kyle taking, and his father for that matter, running backs straight into the mule factory.
Terrell Davis.
They go straight into the glue factory because you overuse them, because you're too focused on winning the play.
Come on, bro. Come on, man.
You have to manage your team, and he's not doing that.
It's all over the place, Tom. Right. Terrell Davis, look at Alfred Morris's rookie numbers.
Sure. The pattern
Come on, man. RG3, Trey Lance. Come on, man. He's just calling plays, bro. Like, if I think you can do it, you do it. That's it.
Well, if I think it helps me win the play, that's what I'm calling. No caution, no thought to process, no thought to workload. Go. And that's Kyle. That's one of the baggage problems of having Kyle Shanahan, is stuff like this. Dude, it's happened his entire career. It's undeniable.
How many weeks did we watch Dre Greenlaw before? You mean to tell me Dre Greenlaw, that was a freak accident? Him just running off the sideline in his Achilles, that just happens to one of the greatest athletes to play the game. That just happened. No. How many weeks did we watch Dre Greenlaw labor week in and week out? He shouldn't have played against Green Bay.
His entire career. And it's the same thing. It's doing whatever you have to win the game by putting these players out there and just hitting the easy button.
Come on, man.
And in Dre's case, it's the wide 9 exposes linebackers. You had that a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Brilliant point of how playing in this system damages your linebackers. Dre is a victim of that. All of that plays in quickly on lessons learned. Clearly, you have to learn on the contracts so that you can't stretch this out. Learn from the best GM in the league. Learn from Brad Holmes. What does he do? He signs these guys in Detroit right away. And look how it's worked for them. They have continuity. Why did the Niners have trouble coming into the year? Because they didn't have any continuity going in. They didn't play together. Everybody parachuted into the season. You can't play that way and win. And they've had that continuity problem the entire year because every individual is parachuting in. You can't do that. You have to gather your team and get your resources together, get them accustomed to playing together, and then go out and get things done. Then, what was the message that Kyle sent? Doubling down on veterans. What are you doing? These guys are in the very late stages of their career to begin with. You're extending McCaffrey when he's 28 and he's hurt. What are you doing? And this comes back to organizational learning, as MBA, typical terms for me. Organizational learning, you've already figured this out and you ignore it. Bill Walsh, you always let a player go a year too early, not a year too late. And this was before the cap. And Walsh is saying this. And he said it because you needed balance on your team of content versus hungry. He knew that. Kyle ignored it. He doubled down on the veterans. They're old. They're already got a high odometer count. They got hurt. Very predictable. What's the other thing that Walsh said? Never pay for past performance. What did Kyle do? He paid McCaffrey for past
Past
performance.
performance.
He didn't pay him for future. And then what did they do? They didn't even realize. Lynch said he was surprised that Trent Williams came in and asked for the McCaffrey extension. You had to know when you gave him that Trent Williams was going
It
to
was
come in
open
and say,
season.
"Where's my money?" That this offseason, I'll be surprised if Fred Warner doesn't come in and say, "Where's my McCaffrey extension?" Kittle would be justified doing the same thing. The Niners have to figure out how to sort all of that out. They need a GM that actually sees how you need to get this done. Kyle is over his head in all of this.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that I'll tell you right now is that there's so many things um, that we need to look at moving forward. If you understand how just the self-inflicted wounds, man, it's just, oh my God, like we're not a bad team. Like we
No,
are not a dude. We are not a bad team. It is so frustrating to watch how unprepared we are. Like this isn't us losing close ones. You know, like I brought up in other shows, what's been frustrating about this time is just we have been getting mollywopped. Like these are not just losses that we've lost in the end to tough teams. I
yeah,
could take us losing to Buffalo, but it was a hard fought game, right? But dude, getting boat raced by the Packers and then going to Buffalo and having them basically mercy us. They mercy ruled us. Like, hey man,
yeah, they
we
pulled
understand
everybody in the fourth.
this ain't really y'all's game. This ain't really y'all's
Yeah,
week. We respect you guys. Just let's get out of here. I want to see fight, bro. Like it's 5 games
well,
left. If they
that's what
don't
this
show any type
Chicago
of
game is.
yeah,
They have to show it. Quickly, I need to respond. Trip Aces says, and it cost the Niners 91 season, maybe 92 by getting rid of Ronnie Lott. I'm not saying that it always works, but most of the time it did. Lott had a great year for the Raiders the first year he left San Francisco, but you can look at other examples where year too early versus a year too late worked for the Niners. Lott is one, and I would say that Jerry Rice is another where Walsh just didn't understand that Jerry was capable of playing that long. I don't think Bill understood that. But there are
good,
other examples where you can look at it and say, Steve Young over Montana, yeah, that was clearly the correct decision. There's a number of times where you can look back on it on a number of decisions Walsh made in the draft, in free agency, in what the Niners did that did work. Overall, year too early rather than a year too late is the right call to make. And this year's team proves that it was the wrong call for Shanahan to make. All these injuries and the lack of balance in content versus hunger. You know, there weren't enough young guys that were out to get their bag. This team was not fighting and urgent in their play because they were out of balance. That's what happens when you double down on veterans and you don't have the depth because you draft so poorly. Those two things combined on them for this year.
good call, comp. Good call, Tom. All right, let's get to a couple of these super chats while we're here. Uh By Victor 1, we should draft a kicker in the first round, Kyle. There's a lot of those G Wiz picks that now that they don't look so good. Punter in the fourth, kicker in the third, trading up for a running back in the third, another running back in the third. We for TDP. What was that? Who's the other guy?
TDP, if I can quickly do that. TDP was picked ahead of Kirby Joseph. He was on the board at the time. Look at the season Kirby Joseph has had. I was banging the board before that pick. Kirby Joseph. TDP.
Look, bro. Matt McCune, Kyle should play all the young guys to see what he has in them so they know what they have to address in the offseason. Yeah, I agree. I think for them, mathematically, this is the thing. And I could probably bet dollars to donuts. This is where the coaching staff is thinking, especially Kyle and John. We just got to get it on paper. If we can make the playoffs, no matter what the hell has happened, you know what I mean? Like, no matter what has happened, if we somehow make it close and get to the playoffs, we can spin this into anything. I believe that if they're mathematically alive, they're still going to put their best foot forward. We won't see like this huge transition of young guys playing. Right now, it's just a little too soon for that. I mean, honestly, we live in check to check, baby. It's really week by week, honestly. So it's a slow, agonizing death. But for right now, we're just not there yet.
No. And you look at what Kyle did in 2020, and he played the veterans. He didn't play kids. It was a similar situation. And you didn't see any change in the lineup until you got to the finale where he played Beathard. Otherwise, it was the same guys. He'll do the same thing this year.
Yeah. Matt McCune, coach, grow up. Yes. That's coded language, though. We understand what David loves to talk down. We understand. Gaming Brown, coach, grow down. Get it. Matt Manhattan John, no more busted 80 speak and spell play calling. Kyle, A, B, blend the goddamn running game, Kyle. Look, I'll tell you this. Kyle needs to figure out what he's going to do with this offense moving forward, because if you look at it, the worst teams in the red zone in this NFL season are offenses that are teams that adopt our offense. Right now, the offense is just vanilla. The team is kind of vanilla. If you look at what we do on defense, man, we don't disguise anything. We don't disguise. We literally, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen like a disguised defense where I said, oh man, okay, they got out of it. That's cool. But really, we're pretty much straight up and down, no frills kind of defense we are. And, we're a little, I hate to put it, man, like we're a little outdated. Like from a football standpoint, we're outdated. Yeah, there's a lot of change that we need from a schematic standpoint.
Well, the theme song for the defense is "What You See Is What You Get."
Is what you get. What's my shit?
Yeah. So that's part of it, is that simulated pressure is what's working in the league, and you don't use it. Blitzing. I mean, look at what's happening in Detroit. They lose Aiden Hutchinson and they blitz 46% of the time to compensate. Or you want to talk about red zone offense. Look what Ben Johnson did on that one play where they had a fake pitch to Gibbs wide, and Jake Laporta running in the opposite direction across the end zone. No one was within 5 yards of him, and all Goff has to do is pitch and catch.
Bro, if you don't even have to do that, man. Like, which is beautiful. I love that. But just watch the Packers game. Sure. Like, watch what the Packers were doing to us on offense. Like,
what the Packers do in their run design is amazing.
Oh my God! Like, Tom, I could barely call the game. They had so many unique packages, releases, how they were getting to the counter. Like, I was sitting here like, dude, we don't do any of this. It's ridiculous. Kyle is really on, like, he's just kind of like a press play. Like, he's kind of getting styled on by people that he taught this scheme to. It's kind of wild. Serenity, Coach, grow always and continue to learn. Love to you in time. My favorites, always, always. That's we can't help but do that. So that's always going to be there.
Thanks for the
Uh,
thought, though. Thanks for the thought, Serenity. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Chunder Boy, like and sub. Keep killing, Coach. My guy. Thank
Yeah.
you, brother. Chunder Boy, $5. Thank you. We need to help. We need help to make playoffs. Sure, but we got to win first. Turnovers, bad red zone, lack of physicality, injuries. Not sure we can win enough games. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is, man. Like right now, we can't. I think we can lose one game, but it can't be to an NFC opponent.
Not
Um,
really. Even that. They have to
yeah,
run the table. If you go through the tiebreakers, even if they say, okay, we tie on one loss record, we tie on division, we tie on common opponents, then it comes to strength of victory is the next tiebreaker, and that's how many wins by the teams you beat. The Niners have their opponents that they beat have 40 wins. Arizona has 44 wins. Seattle has 46. They're
we
going to
haven't
lose.
beat anybody, bro.
Right. And so they're going to lose that tiebreaker too. So the only way that the Niners can make the playoffs is to win out.
It's pretty fucking bleak. All right, so let's get into our last topic, our next topic, which is Kyle Shanahan coaching versus Kyle Shanahan, the GM. So let's get into it. While Kyle Shanahan faces criticism for coaching mistakes, the bigger concern might be his GM decisions. Are his roster building choices hurting the 49ers more than his in game strategies? Let's discuss this. Tom, this one's your baby. I
Yeah.
know that you have a lot to talk about. So go ahead and let's get into it.
Okay. You get the media talking in their defense of Shanahan. It's always about Shanahan, the coach. It's never about Shanahan, the GM. But the problem of the team is Shanahan, the GM. Doubling down on the veterans, the extension for McCaffrey, the spillover domino effect of that, his team parachuting into the season. Then you get to the draft and you say, okay, two wide receivers, he doesn't play either one. Trade up for Garendo, didn't play him and won't until forced by injury this week to do so. You had the best offensive line draft in 10 years or more. You only draft one offensive lineman. You don't respond to what the draft provides you. That's a core mistake of a GM. 2022 draft, horrendous. 2023, also terrible. 2024, good draft. You've got Renardo Green. You've got Malik
Dominic Pooney.
Mustafa. You've got Dominic Pooney. So you got three starters. You did well there. But that's one out of the past 3 years where you could argue the 2022 draft by the Niners was the worst in the league. The 2023 draft by the Niners was the worst in the league. And now look at the full genre of Shanahan as GM in the draft. All the missed picks in the first round, all the missed picks in the second round, overdrafting weapons, underdrafting offensive linemen.
Mm.
And then the practice, and I think that this is partially Parag of, well, DeForest Buckner wanted too much money, so we're going to move on from him, and then we're going to draft his replacement. And in so doing, you trade the pick right before then that became Tristan Wirfs. And you pick one slot later and you take Kinlaw. Oops. You know, and then McGlinchey, same thing. Trent Brown wanted too much money, and so you say, okay, we're going to replace him in the draft. And so you take McGlinchey, and that's with Minka Fitzpatrick on the board, and Vita Vea, and a number of other people. It's just the draft mistakes are throughout, and no one ever talks about it because they don't know, is this Kyle? Is this Lynch? I think that you can look at these and say, Kyle's the one that's going to trade 3 number ones for Trey Lance. That's a Kyle call. All these weapons, that's for Kyle's benefit. That's his call. So all this GM stuff, it's what's killing the team. Then you get to what I think is the reason they haven't won Super Bowls. Kyle on the offensive line refuses to spend big free agent money on offensive linemen. His philosophy in the cap is to use the offensive line to the right of Trent Williams as a cap saving center. He doesn't want to invest in it. But then he goes down and doubles down on his mistake because he's not willing to draft offensive linemen early to compensate for that. He says, no, I want guys that can catch the ball, or I want guys that hold the ball, and I want guys that can rush the passer. And so you don't get an investment in the offensive line, and that's how you end up with your starting center was undrafted, your right tackle is late in the draft. Trip ace is Zach Frazier. Yeah, exactly.
Come on, man.
Where is this season if they took Zach Frazier instead of Ricky Pearsall?
We're in a completely different ball game with Zach Frazier.
Right. And Frazier, probably a Pro Bowler and a great player already. One of the best centers in the league already. And that's a pick that Kyle would never make because it's an offensive lineman in the first round. Kyle philosophically is opposed to doing that because he doesn't touch the ball. And that all goes back again to the father of the wide zone run preaching and you showed me the video of this, of the guy talking to coaches saying, you don't need to use a first round pick on an offensive lineman. You just need dogs. You don't need that tackle with long arms. You just need dogs to run the wide zone. What about the pass protection?
Come on, man.
Mumble, 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 mumble. But Kyle hung on to that, and that's why we've got a bad offensive line. He won't invest in the offensive line in free agency. He won't invest early picks on it in the draft. And so you get the offensive line we have. And you lose the mismatch to Chris Jones in both Super Bowls, and you lose as a result. Why am I so in favor of moving on from Kyle Shanahan? It's because I want Kyle Shanahan, the GM, to be replaced. I don't think the Niners can win a Super Bowl until that happens.
Agreed. First of all, Tom fucking killed it. Tom is cooking right now. I agree with you 100%. Look, I understand right now I'm looking at some of the comments as you were going. Kenny 49ers actually put a comment in asking, how do we know? There's no telling what Frazier would have done here. Listen, you see what he's doing somewhere else.
Talent,
all right.
Talent.
Come on, man. It ain't hard to tell. You understand what real talent is. It was Kyle Shanahan himself that said the center position is one of the most important positions in his offense. You saw what an aging Alex Mack did for us just in one season. That was one guy that I think that really surprised Kyle in leaving because they were practically begging him not to retire because they understood how much of an asset he was. They understand that Kyle needs to start outsourcing some of these responsibilities to somebody else because I 100% agree with you, Tom. One of the biggest issues with us is that we have not treated the offensive line as a priority. We haven't drafted it well. We haven't gone out in free agency and doubled down on it. All right. And if you think about it, what we have done, we've slowly but surely we've been groomed into accepting mediocrity. When this offense first got here, it had Joe Staley at left tackle. Okay. When this offense came here, they went and got Lincoln Tomlinson. All right. Remember when they went to go get Weston Richburg? All right. Yeah. Because he was supposed to be the tip of the spear center that was going to really carry things out for us. All right. They went and drafted Aaron Banks in the second round. All right. They have come up on. They had a good offensive line that has been slowly but surely whittled down into what we see as this mess of five guys right now. And I'm not being disrespectful, but what we're saying, but it's just a little rich that we move from two sides of the coin with Kyle. And with one side, we get us having arguably one of the greatest offensive linemen to play in our franchise in Joe Staley. And then they double down and go get Trent Williams. All right. You got a former second round pick, I believe Lincoln Tomlinson was. Former second round pick and Lincoln Tomlinson at guard. Come on. You know you need the dogs up front. But then we can flip all the way to 2024. We can have Chris Forrester sitting at the podium saying that, oh, yeah, I'd much rather get guys, ball carriers and athletes with the ball rather than getting offensive linemen. Boulder Dash. Stop it. Hooey. None of that stuff works, man. It's one of the things that I feel that we need to do. I don't want to step into the next topic, but the trenches, man. The trenches. I'm telling you, that's right now. We don't have an identity because, to be honest with you, we are a finesse team. We were a finesse team last year, masquerading as a physical team when we couldn't run when we couldn't run the ball. And then we used to face teams that were physical and they put a foot in our ass, like we
Right.
placed Baltimore.
Yeah, that was brutal.
Brock threw 4 picks. Okay, that was bad, but they also whooped our ass. All right. Our offensive line got taken to the woodshed. All right. So the biggest thing that our issue is right now is that we're just not a tough football team. We're not physical. That's a problem. You go and you see Green Bay. Green Bay ran up and down the field on us. The first game where we should have seen that we wasn't physical, Minnesota.
Yeah, and it proved out right there. But people will say, "Well, that's just a blitz scheme." No, that's also players.
Yeah.
It's, and all of this follows with Shanahan's scheme. It's just if you overdraft weapons and you underdraft in the trenches, you get lack of physicality. And
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you keep going down on, oh boy, weapons, and you don't draft linemen. I mean, look at what Fred Warner has to say about what's happening in front of him in the wide nine. They're not occupying
They're in
blockers,
his lap.
and there's nothing Fred can do. It's just this defense is designed to have the front four win. And did you take in any defensive lineman in the draft? No.
None.
Again, it's GM malpractice. You have to strategic coherence is key. How do you win on defense? Front four. So why are you not drafting it?
I'm telling you, right now, I love this quote from Terradome because I had a coach who told me this. I had an old defensive coach, and he told me he hates offense. The only people on offense that he loves is the offensive line. And right here, Terradome puts it perfectly. The offensive line is an extension of your defense. The 72 Dolphins, 78 Bears, 85 Bears, 2000 Ravens, 03 Bucks, 2013 Seahawks. All of these teams had remarkable defenses, but they all had great offensive lines. All right. And that offensive line keeps the game manageable. They pace out that clock. All right. They wear down that team. I'm telling you, defenses love good offensive lines because not only do we save them, we save them tons of time to rest and to be ready to get back on the field, but we go up against each other in practice. We get them better. We're the reason why they got a good run game. We're the reason why they know how to fill their gaps and chase down inside and outside zone and duo. All right. So I love this quote right here because I get along. I got along with all the defensive guys on my team that I played with.
Absolutely. You're their best friend.
Yeah. Loved it.
Great stuff from Terradome and so true.
Yeah.
To your point on practice, steel sharpens steel. You face that every day. Everybody on defense and offense on the line becomes the tip of the spear. Everybody's capable of doing that because you're facing greatness. So that's the issue there.
Definitely. Let's get into our last topic and get up out of here, man. So 49ers offseason priorities and free agency. So let's get into it. As this season nears its end, As this season nears its end, the 49ers future becomes a hot topic. What are their top offseason priorities and how can they rebuild for 2025? From roster moves to coaching changes and break down what's next for the franchise. So immediately, I kind of let the cat out the bag on the last topic, but we can just bring it up again. The trenches, man. I just think that we're not a tough team. We've got to go retool the offensive line and not just retool, but change a little bit of the philosophy. The offensive line matters. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's not a footnote to the offense. I don't care about how good the routes are or who you have at receiver. We got to get good offensive linemen. All right. It saves the game in so many different instances. We could be here all day. All right. But one of the reasons why you can start a game and protect the quarterback is because you have a good offensive line. One of the reasons why you can get a stable of running backs is because you have a good offensive line. All right. You can control the game. You don't start off without, you can't start complimentary football without starting out with a good offensive line. All right.
Exactly.
You got to control the line of scrimmage. All right. Football first before you get cute and start drawing up all of your little arrows and doodads. All right. Understand how to control the line of scrimmage first. All right. If you can't block it, you can't run it. All right. That's the number one thing that I learned. Number one, that's the first thing you learn about offensive football is that if you can't block it, you can't run it. Period.
Yeah,
All right. I don't care who you got on the field.
It'll get blown up.
Exactly.
There's no way you can succeed that way.
Right. So with me, I think that they should try to find, they should still go young. I don't mind them going into the draft to find offensive linemen. There's not really such thing as an offensive lineman that needs to kind of sit down to get better. He's not an offensive lineman, in my opinion. You need to draft starters, guys that can actually compete and fight to get time. I would not mind seeing an offensive line and defensive line late in draft early. First, second, third round picks. It's time for us to go get I think forgotten country. It's time for us to go get a center. Either you go get a center, you go get a guard. All right. If we need to, what they really should do, we need to go get a left tackle. If the wheels really fall off and we get high up in the draft, and this year's draft is somehow, quarterback late or whatever, I wouldn't be mad about us getting a left tackle in the draft this year. It's time for us to really start planning for life outside of Trent. And honestly, with me, I'm a little bit mean with it. I would have drafted a left tackle and either stuck Trent over at right or put the left tackle at right. But we need to figure out how to start getting more bang for our buck. Defensively, I'll close with it because I know you really want to get on this topic. Defensively, a pass rusher. Go get one. Go get a real pass rusher to actually book in the other side of Nick Bosa. We're paying him all of this damn money. Go get a pass rusher and go get a damn defensive tackle. A real one. All right? Go get a nose. Go get an edge. Go get a nose or go get a 3-tech. Whatever you got to do, get a 2-eye guy. We need an interior guy. We got linebackers that can run. All right. I like what our corners have done. They've drafted well. All right. Jair Brown is massively regressed. All right. So we have to figure out what we're going to do at safety. But for me, pass rusher, interior lineman, tackle. Go ahead, Tom.
I agree with that list. It's fortunately for the Niners, this draft allows them to do that. Not so much at offensive line. Will Campbell from LSU is considered to be the top lineman, but his arms are shorter, and so there's a lot of talk you might have to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
You don't spend a pick that high on a guard. The tackle from Texas, Kelvin Banks, is well thought of. He's a possibility. I have the Niners going at 12. If you're trying to mock out where the Niners would draft, keep in mind that tiebreakers in the draft are broken by strength of schedule, not by head-to-head or anything like that. The Niners strength of schedule ranks 7th right now, and that's before they play Detroit, so it's going to go up. The teams with the weaker strength of schedule will win the tiebreaker. They'll pick before you. So for the Niners, anybody that they're tied with, say there's a group of 4 teams at their record, the Niners will pick 4th out of that group because their strength of schedule is so high. So keep that in mind in terms of where they're going to pick. I think they'll go somewhere between 12 and 15. The defensive tackle from Michigan's a monster. He goes Brandon Graham. He goes top 5 though. Fortunately, there are 2 monsters at Michigan. Kenneth Grant's the other one. He's somebody that they could pick with their first round pick at 12 to 15, wherever that falls. To me, the biggest need is defensive tackle. They have to stop the run. And there's 2 ways of doing that. The free agent market at defensive tackle is pretty good. DJ Jones is finally a free agent. Go bring him back.
Bring him back.
But he's 30 and he's starting to fade a little bit. The best defensive tackle in free agency is Poona Ford from the Chargers. Check out the PFF grades. 83.5 overall, 71.2 pass, 77.4 run. DJ Jones, by comparison, 66 on the pass, 61 on the run. So Poona Ford is a better is a better player, and he's 29 while DJ's 30. But those are the two guys I'm looking at. The other top defensive tackles are mainly pass rushers as opposed to run stuffers. The
Oh
Niners
man,
need.
he fits DJ Jones's comp though. 5'11", 310. Puna
Yeah,
Ford. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's the kind of players that in free agency, that's what I think they need to do, and I think that's what they will do, because that takes defensive tackle off of the draft board so that you can then take an edge. There's three very good edges in this draft around where the Niners pick, and you can look at those guys. So that's Abdul Carter from Penn State, James Pierce from Tennessee, Nick Scorton from A&M. One of those three, in my opinion, should be the first round pick. But Nolan from Ole Miss is a beast too. But he's projected to go later. So if you wanted Nolan, you could trade down for him from 12, 15. What do I think Kyle's going to do? I think Kyle's going to take a weapon. Kyle's going to take what he needs. Colston Loveland, tight end, Michigan. Why?
You really think he's going to do this?
Yeah. Part of it is my I hate Kyle the GM, so I'm going to make him an absolute blithering idiot. So keep that in mind.
I got you, dog.
Saying this.
I got you, dog. I got you. Go ahead.
but in all seriousness, I do think, and yeah, Abdul Carter's probably going top 5, top 10. But we'll see. But I think that there's ways that he could try to justify it. He could say Kittle's 31, going on 32. He's been injured a lot. We've tried to get tight ends and we've failed. Look at what Blake Bortles has done. We can get the best tight end in this draft, and he'll help us immediately. We need to go with more 12 personnel. If we're moving on from Juice, we need 2 viable tight ends. Colston Loveland's the best tight end. We take him. The problem with that, you're not using what the draft gives you. The draft is giving you 3 high-impact defensive ends that can rush the passer.
Gotta go get him.
It's giving you a great defensive tackle. That's what you have to do, and that's also the best positional value on top of what the draft's best player available would be where the Niners pick. But could I see Kyle doing that? Yeah, because he tends to like weapons. He needs a tight end desperately. Loveland's a great one, and he could say, I need to do this. The number 2 tight end is going to go in the 20s, so you can't wait around. The number 3 and the number 4 tight ends go at 70 to 80. That could be the 3rd round pick. That's the guy from Bowling Green or the guy from LSU. Either one of those guys could be the pick in the 3rd. That's what I would do. I would say, okay, edge in the 1st, defensive tackle or best player available in the 2nd, tight end in the 3rd, and you move on from there. That would make the most sense.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mind tooling up the offensive line from the 4th round down. I wouldn't mind that. You can find good offensive linemen in those areas of the draft. Seriously, in those rounds.
Right. I've got the center from Georgia is who I have mocked in the 4th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I mean, Tom, we got to sit down and get some draft stuff coming. It's almost time, man.
It's time.
It is time. Hey, man, today was a good one, bro. Let's get a couple of super chats out of the way, man, so we can get out of here. Right now, NAFCA. We need to draft O-line and corners. Broccoli is okay. I got you. Katrina Allen, Kyle is going to bankrupt the 49er organization. He is falling apart. He has no regard for the health of the players. The bill is due. The bill is due, sis. I definitely agree with that. Chunder Boy, I'm a Kyle guy. We are soft and slow. We need a change in philosophy. Probably means Kyle has to go. No coach that did not taste good coming out. Yes, I know. And I'm glad this is a guy that is a huge Kyle Shanahan fan. And he sees the light, bro. It's like it's time. Yeah. And I know it hurt. You had to pay to say it. So I know it sucked. Austin, 199. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Walter Nolan DT from Ole Miss is a damn beast. Walter Nolan is a dog. He is too.
I like him, but he's 20, so you can trade down for him.
Definitely.
You don't need to use the pick at 12 to 15.
Hey, Tom.
Chad asked about Ursary. Ursary is late first. You would need to either trade up for him or trade down. He wouldn't fall to you in the 2nd round, and he'd be way too early at 12 to 15.
Yeah. Ursary is a little bit too much right now, but I'm going to tell you right now, offensive line, we're definitely going to be doing all of the film review here, all of the stuff for the trenches, defensive line. We're going to be able to get all of that stuff together. Tom. as you know. What's going on for the rest of the week with you, bro?
Oh, just writing articles, writing books.
100%.
Same old.
Hey, I'm going to be setting up the call-in show for tomorrow. We'll be able to get into it at 3:30. It's going to be really dope. 3:30 Eastern. That'll be 12:30 Pacific time, and we'll be able to get it in then. Hey, as you know, this is the coach again with my man, Tom Jensen. You know the deal. Stay low and keep your feet moving. Have a good one, guys.